going up, rent's going up, our energy prices are going up, and guess what Rishi Sunak does? Well, he gives us all a £200 loan. Let's give him a big round of applause for that, eh? Boom! So when I say Rishi, you say who? Rishi! Rishi! Rishi, Rishi, Rishi!
Okay. Thanks for making the day, honestly. We'll just see you after the lunch.
So next up, give a big round of applause for Blythe from the SWP.
Hi, my name's Blythe and I'm a member of the Socialist Workers' Party in Stoke Crew. So energy bills are increasing by over 50%. Council tax, water rates, broadband and petrol costs are also rising.
Well said. Well said.
We are facing the worst cut to living standards since the 1950s.
Here, here.
And this is already at a time when 1 in 5 people are in poverty. But if you're a child, that figure increases to 1 in 3. And we're one of the richest nations in the world. And we've got 1 in 3 children living in poverty in this country. These prices will push people further into destitution. Parents will not even be able to afford beds for their children, having to skip meals for themselves in order to choose between feeding their kids and heating their homes. And this will be the increasing reality of life in this country, and it is not acceptable. But do you think the Tory party and MPs and ministers are facing these battles? No, absolutely not. And this is a crisis, not just for working people in this country, but everyone who is struggling to already feed, clothe and shelter themselves. But like I say, this crisis doesn't affect everyone equally, because Tory ministers, just earlier this week on Tuesday, they weren't worrying about the cost of living because they were off to have their team bonding meal at the Park Plaza in London earlier this week. So I'm sure we can all spare a thought for Rishi Sunak, because it must be really expensive heating his Georgian mansion in Yorkshire. But the Tories say they're helping families with the increasing costs, but their pitiful rebates and short-term loans are not enough. And some of their solutions to this, such as the cuts to fuel duty, does nothing for those without cars and are having to rely on expensive and unreliable transport. Yet some people are making a lot of money whilst this is happening, because it's happy days actually. It's happy days for the loan sharks and it's happy days for the private landlords. And it's record profit for the Black Cat energy bosses as they gobble up literally multi-million pounds in payouts.
It's all the same.
But this crisis is a crisis of the system in which we live under, and that system is capitalism. And it's the working class which picks up the bill and the rich carry on as normal, lining their pockets.
Okay, my family.
Because the Tories are quite happy to facilitate this, overseeing attacks on the working class, while keeping things ticking along nicely for the bosses. We have to pose a challenge to this economic system. We need to say that their drive for profit is the cause of this crisis, and the exploitation of people is the result. The P&O scandal, which has been unfolded very recently, is a clear example of this, where the bosses knowingly broke the law in order to save their own skin, resulting in 800 families being thrown into crisis. And they even said, brazenly, that they would do it again.
If you shout for local things.
But this is why we need to fight, and this is why we need to organise on the ground and in the street. And we can do that with solidarity. But it's going to take strikes, it's going to take marches, it's going to take community action and occupations, and even more to achieve that. And we can do that with solidarity. We can build that solidarity. We can build that solidarity right now in our own city.
There's no one there who can fight.
We're striking the lecturers and peers
and you had our dinners.
and striking lecturers over and staff.
We do our best, don't we?
We can build solidarity with DWP workers in Hanley who are facing closure of their office.
What?
But when we fight back, we can win. And that is where our strength lies, and that is what we need to do as a matter of urgency. So let's build a movement that tells the Tories that we won't pay for their crisis, and we will take back what is ours. Solidarity.
Cheers, B. I'll say it again. The Tories partied while our loved ones died. They broke the law 20 times. But it's one rule for them, and another for us, isn't it? Exactly. So, when I say Tories, I think you know what to say at this point. Tories! Out! Tories! Out! Tories, Tories, Tories! Out! No, let me be clear. I mean nationally and locally.
Go
on, tell me a percentage.
Oh, very low.
Next up, talking from the Green Party, we have Adam Colclough. Give it up for him. Hello.
Say if there's 20%.
This week, the Resolution Foundation released figures showing that 1.3 million people are at risk of falling into absolute poverty. Absolute poverty here in one of the richest countries in the world. How can that ever be right? These are not data sets on a spreadsheet. They are people. People with lives and hopes. Lives and hopes that have been crushed by a system where however hard they work, the system will not work for them. Instead, it works for the boss of P&O when he sacks 800 people over a Zoom call because he hasn't even got the guts to be in the same room. It works for the energy companies when they rack up huge profits and leave vulnerable people shivering in the dark. It works for millionaire Tory MPs who lecture us about theft and then fiddle with their expenses. Now, the responses of our leaders has been disgraceful. Some stood on the sidelines and potently wringing their hands. They'd like to help, but can always think of a good reason why we don't. Others have retailed that tired old line about tough choices having to be made. When the toughest choice they make is ordering a bottle of wine to go with their subsidised lunch.
It's hard for the normal working class.
Having a secure home, decent veg at work, knowing your children are not going to go to bed hungry. These are not luxuries, they are basic human rights. Rights that we're not won and will not be defended by a timid opposition that walks in fear of tomorrow's Daily Mail editorial. They'll be won and defended by us, the working people, coming together in solidarity. And that is why, comrades, and I use the word comrades because we are united in a struggle for our lives. Time has come for us to rise up, to organise, to take to the streets and do so without any fear, because all we have to lose is our chains and we have a whole world to win. Solidarity, comrades! The Tories don't struggle with paying for petrol. The Tories don't struggle to heat their massive homes. And I tell you what, the Tories aren't resorting to eating beans on toast to feed themselves because they can't afford anything else. So when I say Tories, you say out! Tories! Out! Tories! Out! Tories, Tories, Tories! Out, out, out! Brilliant! Next up, Chris from Norscarf.
Okay, hello everyone, my name's Chris and I'm from Norscarf, which stands for North Staffordshire Campaign Against Racism and Fascism. We've got a banner over there, feel free to come and say hello to us if you've not seen us before. So Norscarf was set up in the 1970s to counter the rise of fascism and far-right parties in this country, and since then a lot of our work has been to do with those people, those racists. But over the last few years we've been finding more and more that our efforts have been geared towards a different bunch of racists, and they're the racists that sit in our Houses of Parliament right now as we speak. We've been finding that systemic racism entrenched in our society is something that our Tory government, rather than working to reduce, is actually, they ignore it, they sneer at it, and they reinforce it as well. And we've seen that clearly over the past couple of years. We've seen it with the shocking, disproportionate numbers of deaths from COVID amongst people from black and ethnic minority communities. We've seen it with the repression embedded within the policing bill, which will criminalise travelling communities and give police more powers to target black and Asian people on the streets. We've seen it with the Sewell report, which whitewashed issues with structural racism within our key institutions. We've seen it with the Nationality and Borders Bill, which aims to strip away the rights of asylum seekers and migrants. And most recently, we've seen it with the horrific treatments of child Q, a black schoolgirl who was humiliated and abused by the police. And guess what? We're going to see the systemic racism more and more with this cost of living crisis as well. We all know that the people who are going to be hit the hardest by this rise in prices and fall in income are those who are already marginalised in society. It will be ethnic minorities and migrants who suffer the most as they struggle to feed their families, struggle to keep a roof over their heads, and struggle day to day to maintain a decent standard of living. And the Tories are happy with this. They're happy with it, aren't they? They're happy for certain groups, certain demographics to fall by the wayside, because when it's a minority group, it doesn't matter to them. They can just ignore it and let it happen. But with this crisis, it's different. This crisis affects every single one of us, all of us here. And we should use that fact to recognise that a problem for one is a problem for all. That a person's ethnic minority, ethnic background, or their nationality should never be a factor in them slipping through the net into destitution and poverty. And throughout this crisis, the Tories, they will try to victim blame and they will try to pit different groups against each other. But we have to reject this, stand up and say no to it. It's the Tories and their chums who created this crisis, it's not us, and it's the Tories who create the system of racism to try and solidify their power and legitimise these crises. So that's why it's important that we're here today, right? Because by coming together, different groups, different communities from all demographics and backgrounds, we can unite as one to make our voices heard. The only way we can beat back the racist bigots and their fat cat mates is by coming together en masse and opposing them in things like this. When we shout loud enough, they listen, but it has to be all of us together. So, in fighting this cost of living crisis, we also need to fight the hostile environment. We also need to fight the systemic racism which breeds inequality and enables the Tories to get away with it. Unity is our most powerful weapon. We've got to use it. We've got to use it. Solidarity, everyone. Thank you.
Hey, spot on, Chris.
He's right, you know. The Tories are racist.
Yep.
The Tories are homophobic.
Yep.
But most of all, the Tories are classists. So when I say Tories, you say
Out.
Tories!
Out.
Tories!
Out.
Tories, Tories, Tories! And because I hate him, Boris! Boris! Boris, Boris, Boris! Fantastic, thank you. So, that's the end of the scheduled speakers. So now I'd like to offer to anybody else, if you've got anything you'd like to say, please come forward. I think we're going to hear a new poem, or a poem at least, from the Bard of Bucknell. Give it up! So everyone, are you tired of these price hikes?
Yep.
I can't hear you. Are you tired of these gas price hikes?
Yeah.
Are you tired of the petrol prices hikes? Technical difficulties. Would anyone else like to say a few words? Yes, my friend.
Of course you do.
Right, first of all, let's get this quite clear. This is not a crisis, this is a plan. We owned the gas, the water, the electric in the 1970s. The Conservative Party ripped us off. They took it out of democratic control, where you could actually control, by voting, for your supplies and hand it to rich international firms. In fact, there are some elements who are still state-controlled, just not our state. EDF is owned by France. When we pay our bills, gone up by 50%, that's subsidising French people. We need to change this. We need to challenge the idea of a market. The market is a cold, cruel, impersonal fact. It exists there to make the powerful rich, and that's why there's deregulation, because they want to have a new feudal system where certain people, like Boris Johnson, have no laws. Any laws they create are applied to us. You do anything wrong, you get arrested. You party during COVID, you got fined. But if you're a Conservative, you had a wild party, we're not even allowed to know who's had a fine. If this was somebody around here, a working person around here, it'd be in the Sentinel. You'd know how to fine. But with Boris Johnson, it's all covered up. We need to change. The first thing we need to do when we change is stop accepting it. The market will push and push and push. Prices have gone up now. They'll go up again in October. And if you don't stand up, they'll go up again.
Shut up, you're boring!
And they'll keep going up. So it's up to you. Accept it, put up with it, or stand up and complain. If everybody here who's facing a crisis tonight, whether to eat or sleep in comfortable warm houses, went to their MP and complained and filled their offices, they'd take notice. Rediscover your power, people. We don't have to put up with this. It doesn't have to be this way. Solidarity!
Solidarity!
Okay, no problem.
So, Boris Johnson, as the poster says, and all his chums should probably F off back to
Teresa, do we agree?
Yes! So when I say Boris, you say
Out.
Boris! Out! Boris! Out! Boris, Boris, Boris!
Out, out, out!
Brilliant! I'm going to post back to the board of Bucknell now.
There we go.
Okay, I figured out the chant now. Memorise this. The cost of living is way too large. We need somebody else in charge. Ready again? The cost of living is way too large. We need somebody else in charge.
Cost of living is way too large.
We need somebody else in charge. Cost of living is way too large. We need somebody else in charge. Okay, I've got the poem on now. This is the actual poem. We're told to put off of inflation while wages are still in stagnation. They make us all broke, then complain that we're woke if we dare speak ill of the nation. Corporations take in the spoils as our increasingly fragile will boils. They bleed us all dry, yet they still wonder why we tire of insistence on oils. They assert that their will is official, while making our lives sacrificial. But if you open your eyes, you'll soon realise that their power is all artificial.
Fantastic as always. Right, I'm going to pass straight over to Charlie now. Give it up for Charlie!
Hi, I'm a very nervous speaker. What do I do? I just wanted to speak on behalf of someone who is on benefits. I have severe mental health issues. Not only do I not qualify for PIP, which is a whole different argument altogether with the government, I am living alone. I live in one room. My housing benefit is capped at £260 with universal credit, and my rent, as most people's are and more, is double that. The people at the top do not care about those at the bottom, and we need to organise things like this to show them that and to build solidarity and come together and change the way that it is. So, screw the Tories.
Screw the Tories! Screw the Tories!
Sorry about that again. Okay, so would anybody else like to say a few words?
Yes, me.
Please come forward. Do you want to say a few words?
Okay, this lady's going to speak next, but not the megaphone.
That's why he doesn't want us on a level with them, correct?
Levelling down, that's what they do, not levelling
no
up.
COVID, just a bad flu, everything's a lie after lie. COVID out. Johnson out.
He can have his parties.
Oh, he can have all this. And Sunite is greasy.
Well, there we go.
Shouldn't the old people come first? Am I right? Dismiss the old people out. Disgraceful.
Disgraceful!
Lowest pensions in Europe, that's the truth.
That's to Johnson.
That's the one, bro.
Lowest pensions.
That lady speaks for us, I think. Mr. Johnson! This to the rising cost of living! Anybody else want to speak? My good friend here, I'll hold this for you.
Tell them what you think.
Tell Boris,
Oh dear. It's not funny. This is very
tell Boris Johnson to do one.
Do one!
I
think we've got a sentiment here.
So,
if no one else wants to speak, I'll end with a chant, and I've got a few words from a poet, a friend of mine who can't make it today. Okay, so when I say Tories, you say
us.
Tories!
Us.
Tories!
Us.
Tories! Tories! Tories!
Us.
Boris!
Us.
Boris!
Us.
Boris! Boris! Boris!
Us.
Fantastic.
Now I'm going to stop shouting and use the nice words.
the 6 million a month. We refuse to make the bills against the cabinet of the so he hasn't got a deficit.
There it is. Anyone mind holding this for me?
We're telling our council to wait.
I don't really know what she's on about. They just keep saying Corbyn.
How dare you?
Okay, so this poem is by Matt Abbott, who sadly can't make it today. I did actually read it out a couple of weeks ago. We had the Ukraine crisis demo, but I think it's more appropriate now. You wrote this in about 10 minutes, by the way, and all I said was we need a revolution too. The poem's called Rise Up. Apathy is acceptance, and silence is compliance, in a country run by economic vandals. A landslide in the polls legitimised toxicity as we sleepwalk from crisis to scandal. From corruption to poverty to racially driven violence, to oligarchs in Russia whose pockets pay for their silence. It's a failure of the state when lives depend on charity. This country needs to rise up, revolt in solidarity. Suspend the word, stand tall and shout. Grab the country by the scruff of its neck and kick the Tories out!
Thank you.